Tonight, I want to spend some time talking to you about what all of this means. It's no coincidence that all of this stuff is starting to happen. This is, what we talked to you about this about 8 weeks ago. We told you all this would happen. We've been lining out the unions for quite some time. Now it's getting serious, and still nobody's really telling you what all of this means to you. Charles Payne, CEO of WallStreet.com, and Fox Business Network contributor, and Eric Bolling, host of Follow the Money on the Fox Business Network, is here. Let me go, Charles, to you. You brought up Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi Arabia is absolutely going to feel the pressure and possibly collapse.
You're absolutely right, because this, again, if it was about economics, the average GDP per capita, 23,000, they could probably get away with that. But it's about something much larger, much bigger. But I got to tell you, before we went to break, you were talking about the youth and how this thing is spread. You know, the misconception that somehow this is about income inequality and things like that, I find, amazing, because people in Egypt, people in Tunisia, people in Saudi Arabia, the average person there actually makes more money per year than the average person in India or China. And then in the meantime, you've got a guy in India who just built a 60-story house in Mumbai. Mumbai, 60% of the houses are made out of tin. So you've got this 60-story single-family house casting a shadow on all of these shanties, and people aren't in the streets. You know why?
So why?
Because they look up at that and they say, that can be me. We're losing that in this country. But around the world, in certain pockets of the world where you don't see this stuff going on, it has nothing to do with per capita income. Again, it has to do with the fact where young people believe they have a chance, that there's upward mobility. And unfortunately, what I'm worried about, we're talking about all these other countries. In this country, our youth don't really believe there's upward mobility. And the only reason there's not outrage out there is because they think we have a cool president.
Well, wow. That's saying something.
It's scary, because they're going to put off their own revolution for 2, perhaps 6 more years.
Well, he will. I think he will throw his weight behind what's happening. Show the front of the building now. This is the front of Fox. Now this is a cheddar revolution, is what they're calling it. On Saturday, 70,000 activists protested Governor Walker in Madison, Wisconsin. The Tea Party mobilized to counter-protest to support Walker, but a tiny turnout of 2,000. We beat him 35-1. So we'll have a victory rally on Tuesday in front of the real Tea Party headquarters, Fox News. We'll start at 5 p.m., exactly when Tea Party leader Glenn Beck goes on. Beck insists the American people support him. No, I don't insist that at all. I believe the American people support our founders. But we'll show him the American people really support our teachers, our firefighters, our police, and our unions. I agree with everything up until the unions. Americans don't support the unions. They do support our police and firefighters and teachers, and I think you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody on television that supports their police more than I do. We have a coordinated, I mean, when you see people going and saying, hey, we have to have Cairo happen here, and you see the unions, well, one thing that you talked about with the oil that you didn't take into consideration, or most people don't take into consideration, is this perfect storm of how do you hold this together when you have the youth, when you have people instigating problems and trying to stir it all up. I mean, it's costing this teacher thing in Wisconsin is so far $9 million a day. How do you hold this together?
I don't know.
Not a day for the whole thing, $9 million.
I'm not sure how you hold it together, Glenn. Last night on the show, I had a kid. We had a reporter in the audience, a kid. He went up to a little boy. He's 6 years old. And the reporter said, what are you doing here? And he said, I don't want mommy to lose her job. And he said, what's her job? He said, well, she's a teacher. And I turned to him and I said, do you understand? Does he understand that Scott Walker in Wisconsin is trying to save mommy's job? He's trying to make sure that mommy doesn't get laid off because the unions have driven the price of labor so high in Wisconsin they can't afford. They have a choice: either pay a union over market price wages or not, or lay people off.
Eric, it's worse than that. My son, he has a report right now due on Richard Nixon and Watergate. He's in the 8th grade. This is what his subject is in social studies. He comes home all the time and he tells me his teachers blame everything on Chris Christie, the Republicans. Why would you teach an 8th grader, out of all the things that happen in this country, in social studies, and you should see the textbooks? That's his subject right now.
Well, here's the thing, America. We do have some answers coming for you later this week, and a little bit in just a few minutes. Also, I'm going to ask both these gentlemen what I asked a team of experts today. I'm a businessman. I'm a dad. What do I have to do? At what point do things get so out of control that you think you better batten down the hatches hard? What's coming, and how do you not lose everything that you have? In just a second.
Makes the ratings. Daytime, primetime, anytime. More viewers tune into Fox than the competition combined. Fox News Channel, the #1 name in news.
Back with Charles Payne, CEO of Wall Street Strategies and Fox Business Network contributor, and Eric Bolling, host of Follow the Money on the Fox Business Network. I want to ask you guys two questions. One, at what point or what is a trigger that you look at and say, America, batten down the hatches? Because here it comes. This thing's going to spiral out of control.
And give you my assessment, Glenn, real quick.
And then I want to know what the average person should do.
See that $5 gallon of gasoline? $300 billion a year shipped right overseas. Consumers, that'll kill them. It'll make. By the way, when that goes up, everything goes up. Food goes up, wheat goes up, corn goes up. Cotton right now is the highest price it's traded since before the Civil War, including the cotton shortages during the Civil War.
So $5 a gallon gasoline, you say, look out.
That's your trigger right there.
And what do you do about it? What does the average person do?
I'm telling you, I've said it for years. You and I, Glenn, we've been talking about it here. Buy gold. It's a real stuff. It's a real deal.
It's not everybody can afford that anymore.
I don't disagree with the trigger. And it could even be 450. I don't disagree with the trigger. And it's not even the numbers that Eric talked about. It's the psychological. Nothing affects Americans more than high gas prices. When they go fill up and they notice that instead of spending a 20, I'm spending a 50. Now, having said that, I love energy. This is the topic. You know, I happen to love coal more than anything else. I think you got to own some coal in a portfolio. But I also think ride out the market until we get to that point. You know, I know you're defensive, and I know a lot of people have done that, but people have already missed the most incredible rally of the last 2 years, perhaps in their lifetime. I think it can continue. I think we can win this war.
Here's what I'm saying. It's one thing to talk about. You know, with Neil, he's talking to the business people. Talking to the regular person on the street. Yeah. They got money in 401k, and they're lucky to make anything else to have any kind of cash.
Look what's going on, Glenn. There are 14.5 million people out of work. The labor market, bad. The housing market, you said it yourself, prices continue down. Two of the three markets, the only thing not going down is the stock market. If you have $4 to $5 in gasoline, here's my recommendation, America. You have $4 to $5 gasoline coming, and they're saying, you know, this means real trouble. Have some extra food on your shelves. Make sure, because that will mean job losses will be coming your way.
Oh, I think you're going to have 6 months worth of cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in just a second. A personal note tonight, I have to share with you this. Sometimes I can't believe my life. I grew up in my father's bakery when I was a kid, and I never went to college. My dad never went to college. For generations, everybody in my family was a baker. I took one college class one semester. It's all I could afford. I had some success during early adulthood, but I squandered it with drinking and just being a general ass. By the time I met my current wife, Tanya, I had lost everything. And when Tanya finally gave up and said she would marry me, she thought that I would probably be a garbage man. That was my potential, and quite honestly, we were both pretty excited about that being our potential. I find myself in remarkable times, standing with you in these incredible historic times. I have been pondering some things, some of the hardest things that I've ever had to deal with in my life for several months. About 8 months ago, as I was beginning to think some things through, I wanted to meet with this man, Reverend Billy Graham. But when I called, you know, you just don't call the Reverend Billy Graham and say, hey, I want to meet you. They said, no, he doesn't think it's time. Well, time passed. About 2 weeks ago, I was standing in the hallway with somebody, and I said, I just have to talk to Billy Graham. Well, 2 days later, a phone call came in, and it was Reverend Billy Graham. Said he wanted to meet with me. I guess the time was right now. We had scheduled an hour for last Saturday, and it went on for 3 hours. When I went to Billy Graham's mountaintop home in North Carolina, I really didn't expect that I would be having Chinese food, chopsticks and all, with him, but I did. I spoke of a growing darkness and evil. He spoke of a greater growth of light. I remember growing up as a kid, watching him on TV in the summer in my grandparents' house. They'd have his crusade on, and like most kids, I guess, I wasn't really into the message necessarily. But I was struck by the sheer size of it. I've been thinking a lot about those religious Billy Graham crusades. You don't see them on television anymore. I can't even imagine them happening in America like that anymore, let alone being covered by a network or on television. I wanted to say to you, look how far we've come, but it's actually, look how far we have drifted. The thing is, the world is changing, and the world can change overnight. It already has. As all of these things change, and the pressure on Israel and America and you grows greater and greater, what holds your arms up? Who is holding your arms up? I would urge you tonight to realize, search out in your own mind, do your own homework, and dare I say, pray on what is important to you. Decide for yourself whether the perfect storm is here, whether it even exists, if the rain has begun to fall, and if this is a storm unlike the world has seen in a long, long time, if ever. You, as a citizen, not only of this country, but of all mankind, have a responsibility, and you have an important role to play. If you're a teacher or a preacher, you tell the truth. You tell the children and those in your congregation that there are consequences for all of your actions. If you're a broadcaster, you do your own homework and tell the truth. If you're a guy like me with the potential of being a garbage man one day, really find out what you believe and hold on to your convictions. Reverend Graham said one thing to me as he left, or as I left him. He said, "Glenn, don't worry. You know how the last chapter ends. You know the story. And people are good. We just have to remind them of that." I reminded him of something that he had said earlier in the conversation. He was so full of peace. He said, "I'm really not worried about death. It's just that whole dying thing that has me worried." America, things will be increasingly tough in the coming days, but it will be okay if we can just be our higher selves and stick together. We have much more on this on Friday. Thank you, Billy Graham, for the inspiration.
800-290-2006.
Here are the union members that are protesting me. That's fine. I want you to know, as union members, I'll stand with you. I just won't stand with this guy, the guy you're standing with, who is standing with this guy and this guy and this guy, who are standing with these people. From New York, good night.